All right. Well, the analytics is saying that we are live. So, welcome to Exploring Glorantha Episode 2. I am one of the hosts, JM, and with me is Evan. Good to see you this morning,
Hey,
bud.
good to see you too.
So, first of all, just thank you to everyone. Again, first and foremost, thank you to the iconic patrons. You are the reason why we're able to do this show and why we're doing this as a live show for you guys before it goes to YouTube later. So you guys get to interact with us in the chat. You get to talk with us, ask questions. Again, we're super grateful for that. And thank you to everybody who has viewed and supported the show and commented on the show. This is like might be the show we've gotten the most comments on. And thanks to Evan for doing being our Glorantha liaison and responding to all of those. So, again, just a shout out. Thank you to Spirit Songstress, Dave, and Byron and Ulf for commenting on the video. Byron, I'm with you. RuneQuest started a love of ancient Near East mythology for me, and that's sort of where my wheelhouse is now, both like scholastically and gaming wise. But anyway, Evan, I've spoken quite enough. What is our topic for today? Now, again, why don't you reframe for our viewers what the show is about, and then what our topic is, and maybe how the two sort of intertwine.
Well, our topic, for as long as we can play it out, is the world of Glorantha.
And that's forever.
First
Right?
discovered by by Greg Stafford in the 1960s, and brought to us for games and fiction and all sorts of enjoyment by Chaosium.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a fantasy world based on the idea of the importance of myth and an exploration of many cultures, regions,
Mm-hmm.
deep history, a deep pre-thick history, and that is animated at its heart by the thought, your Glorantha will vary.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you make it your own. There are many elements and tools provided to you, certain touchstones and waypoints, but you can decide how they incorporate into whatever you're doing with it at your table. If you're playing a game, if you're writing your own fiction,
Mm-hmm.
engaging with it, however. So our topic today is for the novice and even for an experienced person encountering Glorantha, where do you start? Where do you start your adventuring?
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to run a game and draw people into this rich and deep world, uh, um, it can be like being handed an enormous encyclopedia and map set,
Mm-hmm.
which in fact exist, and saying good luck, but have no fear. There are ways to shrink this down so that it is something that you can take care of and take charge of and make your own.
Mm-hmm.
Your Glorantha will vary, and that you can introduce your players to and draw them in without them feeling like they have to write a master's thesis on Gloranthan anthropology before they get to play their character.
Right, and as one of our commenters, Spirit Songstress, said, it can be overwhelming to get into Glorantha for that fact. There is an encyclopedia's worth of world information and lore and history going back 40 years? More than that now. More. That's kind of what we're doing with the show. We want to help you explore Glorantha and help you figure out where to stick your feet in, how to get into the stream of Glorantha. And again, the beauty of it is the goal of Glorantha has always been your Glorantha is canon. Everyone else's Glorantha varies from yours. And so keep that in mind as we kind of go through all of this. So we kind of broke this up, how to start a Glorantha game, into several different steps, and many of them are going to feel quite familiar to any DM who's been out there because it's still a role playing game. I would say, kind of our first stop is introduce what's unique about Glorantha. Like, kind of come up in your head with with what makes Gloranthan stories unique and why you want to start them. So, for example, in my RuneQuest like RQG RuneQuest Gloranthan game that I am running right now, I went to a bunch of players that I had who had primarily only played Dungeons and Dragons, and I tried to hit the key themes that for me stood out as uniquely Gloranthan for what we wanted to tell. And so for me, community is sort of one of the biggest parts of playing in Glorantha. You are your character, but the story is not the story of your character. The story is the story of the clan and the community that you have built and the cults that interact with that community. We're probably going to have to do a whole episode on cults and just what are they, why they are different than cults in other Chaosium games like Call of Cthulhu. Radically different. So yeah, community is super important for Glorantha. In like traditional F20 games, you sort of play the itinerant warrior or spellcaster who it's less about where you came from and more about where you end up. And in Glorantha, that's sort of the opposite. The idea at the foundational level of Glorantha is you are part of something bigger, whether it's the cults that you belong to, your family, your community, your clan, your tribe, your nation. Like it just keeps building up. Evan, what's another theme that you could hang a campaign on?
So obviously, there's a more traditional sort of entry into fantasy role playing, and that is the idea of the dungeon crawl. But there is a um, a real twist to it in Glorantha. Again, the idea that these are things that you are exploring are not just divorced from the world, but they tie into, and you have so many hooks to connect to the deep history and mythology of the world. So when you're talking about a place, for example, in an old second edition RuneQuest adventure book called the Rainbow Mounds, or wait, no, that's Apple Lake. In any case, those are tied to the fact that Glorantha has gone through a series of upheavals, beginning with the War of the Gods, and then proceeding through a series of civilizations rising and falling, and a lot of things being lost. And so, of course, you get models of this from official publications, but then you have the tools to put together. What does it mean? What is this dungeon? What did it used to be?
Mm-hmm.
Was it here in the second age? Typically, we are set in the third age of Glorantha for the default setting. Was it from the first age? Did it exist before time?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the implications for that? And perhaps it's a site, and so then it becomes important, not just because there's monsters and goodies there to go get, but it's deeper connection, and then it can weave back in as the story is told that, oh, not only was that a place that used to be very important, and then it became buried, and then some things made a lair of it and found some nice ancient treasure and magic, but that place is important because way back, a deity or a hero stopped there, and maybe there's a a way to travel between worlds there, because it has a touchstone to a myth that then later becomes important to the survival of whatever community you're part of, whether it's a military organization, a clan, a kingdom. And so um, you can bring people in like, hey, we're going to go in a dungeon, you're going to fight some monsters, and you're going to get some stuff, which feels very much like the roadmap to
It's a familiar
a typical
touchstone.
fantasy game.
Yeah.
But then you'll have them hooked, because you present them with the deeper dimensions of what that place means, and um, that's profoundly satisfying.
Yeah, I think of like the iconic one for me is Snakepipe Hollow, which is this. It's very Caves of Chaos like, if you're familiar with Keep on the Borderlands, but it is tied deeply into the Gods' War and all of the mythology. And by going into places like that, you don't just do dungeon crawls in the traditional sense, but because of things like cults and other high levels of magic, you can do what I think Rob and Jonathan in 13th Age Glorantha calls it myth crawling, where it is a dungeon crawl through the actual myths, trying to fix them or travel through them to come back from the god time. Now, that may be very we've gotten very theoretical here, talking about themes and common deep dives into mythology. Really, your two primary things to just try and help narrow down Glorantha to a place where you could start gaming tomorrow is, first of all, how do you want to play Glorantha, and then where do you want to play Glorantha? And so when we say how, it's really, I mean, it's the same thing you're going to do with any other campaign that you're setting up. What system are you going to use? And so we're going to cover three in very high level today, just to kind of give you a taste for what's out there with Glorantha. So the first one is a very narrativist. If you are somebody who just enjoys telling the story and you want as simple of rules as possible, things that don't get in the way, Hero Quest Glorantha is the way to go. It is very rules light, but still has a lot in there to kind of carry the campaign going forward. I would say out of all three that we're going to talk about, it probably handles the community and the hero questing portions the best. What would you say, Evan?
I think that's right. Of course, there are still rules coming for RuneQuest role playing in Glorantha for hero quests. So right now, if you want a package that sort of covers that whole storytelling, soup to nuts, Hero Quest Glorantha really covers it, and very nicely in one volume.
Mm-hmm. That is one of the nice things, is that it is one volume, and they've got technically they've got two campaigns out right now. They've got the Kingdom of Sartar campaign, and then they've got the Red Cow clan campaign, and that's really everything that you would need to get started. If you prefer a lot more crunch, the original in full color, brand new packaging is RuneQuest Adventures in, or is it Adventures in Glorantha? Gaming in Glorantha? Role-playing in Glorantha. Thank you. I run this game on a weekly basis. This is going to be a lot closer to Call of Cthulhu in system. It's a D100 system. It is very crunchy, like all the way down. So if you enjoy the rules as part of your game, and you want something that is focused on like character history, very violent and deadly combat, and very thematic cults and magic, this is the way to go. And I will say, RuneQuest is brutally violent in its combat. And now, Evan, you played last night, actually.
I did.
What any thoughts or advice to people who may be watching or viewing?
Um, uh, well, uh, the the arc. So uh, take one step back uh, in bringing people in. Um, this is different than your usual fantasy D20 gaming experience, um, and and so there is danger at every level. Even if you are have become very expert, um, you know, a yeoman farmer with a pitchfork who rolls a critical hit on you can kill
Mm-hmm.
you. It so it is. As JM said, combat is deadly. Combat is different. It flows differently. There's different tactical choices um, than in your normal F20 game. And the hit location system really uh, highlights for you the danger. You are going to get hit in a specific place, like your arm, which you could lose, or
Mm-hmm.
your head, which if you lose,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. Don't lose your head.
Um,
That tends to be
that's
rather permanent
right.
in
And,
Glorantha.
they don't have to do your full hit points of damage to you if they just kill your head.
That's right.
So yeah, combat is always an option, but it is always tinged with danger and uncertainty.
Yeah, so I was going to say, what's interesting to me about RuneQuest is how brutally violent it is, and how once characters understand that, they shy away from violence because of how deadly it is. And there's those two main adages of the Sartorite people. Violence is always an option, which is Orlanth's kind of phrase, and there's always another way, Ernalda. And somehow, in some beautiful zeitgeist of game design and rules interaction, they built a system that encapsulates the Orlanthy paradox, if you will. Now, if you have people coming directly from F20 gaming, we live in a golden age which has 13th Age Glorantha. If you have followed Iconic for any length of time, you know how much we are in love with 13th Age and how often we have talked about 13th Age Glorantha. You can go back and listen to our podcasts. We have numerous podcasts on 13th Age Glorantha and related. We talk about their classes, we talk with the game designers. It much like Hero Quest is an all-in-one book. You got everything you need. You've got just enough of a setting, tons of monsters, a couple of adventures. RuneQuest Glorantha, I would really recommend if you're going to get into it. Get the they have a slipcase edition that has the main book, the bestiary, and then the GM's pack. You don't need the GM's pack, but I like the bestiary for RuneQuest is one. It's gorgeous, like just hands down one of the most beautiful game books I own. But you need, it's kind of like trying to run an F20 game without some sort of monstrous manual. So, all right, so that kind of covers our very high level overview of the three game systems. If that's something you would like us to go more in depth, let us know in the comments. Part of this show is to help people who are new to Glorantha get into Glorantha. So if you have specific questions about the setting or the systems that you would like us to talk about, we would be glad to devote part of an episode or a whole episode to doing that. All right, Evan. So we've picked our rule system. We've got our group together. We explained kind of the hook. Really, what's our next step?
Well, you have to pick a place to start, and that certain choices are going to be dictated by those locations. Although there are limits, but not hard and fast rules. You don't have to run just one thing in one place, but there's more support for in different venues. And the reason that these are places to start is because they are the ones that have been most developed as environments over the years by the contributors who have particularly the official campaigns and adventures
Mm-hmm.
put out by Chaosium and other companies that have been involved.
Moon Design being the other one, but now Moon Design is all us, and we are all us, and they are Chaosium. So the traditional starting point for for Gloranthan introductions is Dragon Pass. It has the most support across all three game lines, across all of the years that Glorantha has been in publication. Um, the quick start There's a quick start for RuneQuest that you can download. That has adventures in it. Yeah, it's free. If RuneQuest sounds interesting and you want to get started into Glorantha, download the quick start for RuneQuest. They have several adventure books now. Like the GM pack has adventures. Pegasus Plateau is out, and in PDF, and Smoking Ruins is out in physical form. For Hero Quest, you do have Sartar Kingdom of Heroes, the Sartar Companion. Is there a Pavis book for RuneQuest?
There is a Pavis.
There's a Pavis book,
but that's not in Dragon Pass.
That's true. We'll get to that in a second. And then, so Kingdom of Heroes and Sartar Companion form a cohesive. Here's how you would follow a giant adventure across Sartar, which is the main kingdom in Dragon Pass. Well, one of the main kingdoms. And then the Red Cow Saga is 2 volumes for Hero Quest. Again, gorgeous full color books. And they are set. It's another campaign that kind of follows in the same area. And then 13th Age Glorantha just has a ton of adventures in the back of the book. Now, why don't we take a quick aside, Evan? You want to talk about the Johnstown Compendium?
Yeah.
All right.
So the Johnstown Compendium is the official place to publish fan works for Glorantha. Right now, it's specifically principally geared towards RuneQuest adventures, role-playing in Glorantha. But there have been some Hero Quest Worlds content starting to appear, and they're developing the parameters for doing that more, making that more available, and they are also prepping to allow 13th Age Glorantha materials also to be published through there. So this is the venue that allows you, without making a licensing agreement with Chaosium, etc., to, within certain guidelines, create your own Glorantha materials for RuneQuest, or there have also been some systemless works that have been brilliant that have been published on the platform, and to go and explore things off the beaten path. The Chaosium has to play to its strengths of building on its known areas, or to really spend a lot of deep time to develop something. And they may never get to the little corner of the world that you're really interested in. Certainly not as fast as anybody wants to. There have been some things that we've been waiting since the mid 80s for, that they still, for a variety of reasons, haven't been able to touch on. So a variety of creators have put things out, and one of the best bang for buck is a pretty affordable set of adventures, as low as a couple dollars to whole campaigns for like $20. And these are really impressive works that people have put on that give you an alternative to do something, and also to find more models of approaching Glorantha.
Yeah, another one that I would recommend. I really loved 6 Seasons in Sartar. It's a great introductory campaign. Like, it covers the last days of a clan, and it's wonderful. John Wick, the game designer, not the Keanu Reeves movie character, did an adventure for the Johnstown Compendium as well. So if you're at all interested, go check it out. Just to plug other creators who love Glorantha. Yeah. So Dragon Pass. We talked a little bit about it last episode. What is it? Well, it is this rocky, mountainous region of the world that sits at kind of the crossroads of the northern continent of Glorantha. And it is called Dragon Pass because, well, most of the mountains around there, they're actually true dragons that are sleeping and just kind of the earth has accreted on top of them. And there's a lot of history. Humanity was there. Humanity got kicked out. Humanity got eaten by a bunch of dragons. They've only, in this age, very recently, in the scope of history, come back to Dragon Pass. Sartar is the main kingdom there, but you also have Tarsh, and it is the site of one of the largest conflicts at the end of the Third Age, the Hero Wars, where the Lunar Empire and the barbarians of Prax and Sartar go to war to kind of establish how the age will end. And so it's full of history and great NPCs and storylines. So I'm running RuneQuest Glorantha right now, and what's been interesting is I can just plug the year of my game in and the season that we're currently in, and I can find all of these things that are currently happening, and I can choose to use them or ignore them as I want. Now, you have a lot going on in Sartar, in Dragon Pass. I would say like the main theme, if you're playing in this area, is that theme of community. It is community all the way down, from the tribes to the clans to your family. If you're playing in Hero Quest or in RuneQuest, the first thing you do is either come up with your clan history or you come up with your character's history. So in RuneQuest, through character creation, you actually learn about the history of Dragon Pass. In Hero Quest, when you do your clan creation as a group and you're answering these questions, you learn about the history of just your clan. Again, they've done a great job of funneling it down to just what you need to get started. What are some major themes? Let's just kind of hit a couple real quick so we can get through the other areas that we would recommend starting in. Evan, like top 2 themes of Dragon Pass, what stands out to you?
Top 2 themes. Well, so I'm going to jump down on our list a little bit.
Go for it.
For top 2 themes, I mean, one is the fact that not only is Dragon Pass this mystical place that holds the magic of dragons and things, and that is the heart of the conflict at the Hero Wars between the Lunar Empire and its provinces, but also this is a crossroads of the elder races, where there are as we talked about in the first episode, the elves, who are plant people, the trolls, who are darkness people, the dragon newts, who are a dragon people, of course, lesser races such as the ducks, which are only found in Dragon Pass and are some people, well, we'll probably do a whole thing.
We'll have to do a whole episode on the ducks, yeah.
But ducks add a very important dimension for me to Glorantha, and then also other beast people. This collection of people that are minotaurs and centaurs and satyrs and one of the great innovations back when RuneQuest started was any intelligent creature could be your player character. And so some of these races are only found in Dragon Pass, and others, this is just a very important place. And I shouldn't forget also the dwarves, the Mostali, also play a key role. And so you have this enormous richness and the question of whose side are they going to pick, or what are the conflicts, what uh, what conflicts can be mediated and
Mm-hmm.
worked out, and at what point do you have to choose a side and decide that um, that that a fight is going to break out because of ancient misunderstandings, ancient wrongs, or just a failure to understand the deep and strange alien cultures of these ancient races.
So what I'm hearing you say is, if you like the idea of either playing as one of the unique Gloranthan races, or if you like the idea of building bridges, playing through the diplomacy aspect of coming to understand these different creatures, these different species, Dragon Pass is the place for you.
Absolutely.
Now, for me, what really stands out is, again, this idea of, if you like the idea of communities and relationships being the core of your campaign, this is the place to go. The Sartorites, the main people of Dragon Pass, sort of the main focus around Boldhome and all of the tribes, this is their deal. You're going to interact with clanspeople. You're going to develop relationships. My whole first year of, like, we're 52 sessions into my Gloranthan game, and it's still mainly about establishing marriage relations between clans to kind of draw them closer together. So if you like this idea of community, you like the idea of how does a character, exploring the character's relationships, not just with the other PCs, but with a culture that's larger than them, or with the cults that they engage in, this is the place to go. Now, also, if you just enjoy the idea of a massive war looming with a Roman-esque empire, Dragon Pass is also the place for you. You can set it, like, when the default setting is for RuneQuest Glorantha, it's the war is almost here. If you play in 13th Age, well, the war has you're near the tail end of the war, and chaos is breaking in. But again, setting it in Dragon Pass, you're going to be able to explore all of the themes that Evan just talked about, as well as this idea that, hey, chaos is the thing that breaks us apart. How do we fight that? Now, for Dragon Pass, you have a ton of great options. The Broken Tower is the introduction to RuneQuest Glorantha, and it starts with a cattle raid gone wrong. It is sort of the perfect introduction to RuneQuest. There is Return to Apple Lane for HeroQuest, and also the Sartar Clan Creation Questionnaire. Both of those are free for HeroQuest. So again, you can go to Chaosium's website, download these, and go. And then 13th Age has the Next Valley Over, where something has gone wrong in the next valley over, and it's up to the heroes to go deal with this brokenness where chaos is invading in a very F20 sort of, we are the heroes of the story, let's go deal with this. So that's, I don't know if chat has any questions, but that is sort of Dragon Pass in a nutshell. And we'll probably dig a little deeper into each of these settings depending on what you guys want us to do. Again, this is our high-level overview. How do you pick a place to start? Next episode, we're going to talk about how to run your first adventure in Glorantha, and we'll kind of establish some steps for that, and then we'll show you how in each of these settings, how Evan and I would sort of draw people in for that first adventure. So again, the goal is by episode 4 or 5, you are ready to go, which may seem like too long, but again, Glorantha is well worth the dive into each of these things. Now, for me, Prax is sort of beloved. If you want to play a almost more traditional fantasy game, dungeon crawling, rubble running, mercenary work between powers, Prax is the way to go. What was that?
Hex crawls.
Hex crawls, yes. If you want an open sandbox, go to Prax. Now, Prax has a rich mythology as well. That's you're going to hear us keep coming back to this. Glorantha I mean, it's turtles all the way down. Like you could pick an area, and it starts with the Gods War and kind of builds out from there. But Prax is more about these. You have the tribes of Prax. You have these people. It's more of not a wasteland, but it is not as verdant as Dragon Pass. There's a lot of mythological reasons for why the land is more steppe-like, more desolate. You have a giant city, Pavis, and Big Rubble, which is the giant ruins to go and explore. There are several mercenary groups that kind of run through all of this. Evan, where if somebody wanted to start in Prax, why would you start a campaign in Prax, and then where should we start as GMs?
Well, so yeah, Prax. Um, there's been a lot of um, looking at Prax as sort of the Glorantha Mad Max setting. The idea that that there's a lot of wasteland out there, and it's a Wild West sort of situation. So in some ways it could be spaghetti western meets Mad Max meets the Bronze Age, meets the Gonzo tribes of Prax, which they hate horses. Horses are taboo, but they ride all sorts of other crazy things, ostriches and very big llamas
Yeah.
and rhinos and bison, and the list goes on. Um, so there's sort of two poles. One, you start, you're a city folk, and you start in the one big city, which is Pavis, um, which is really the ruins of ancient Pavis are this thing called the Big Rubble, and
Mm-hmm.
next to it is New Pavis, which is a little tiny outpost that got built next to it. Um, but that's sort of civilization. So you can start in civilization, or you start out as a member of one of these raiding nomadic tribes,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the contrast, sort of the two polar opposites that sort of rotate around each other in terms of generating things. There's a distrust and hatred of the city folk by the nomads and its return, but they need each other as well because neither is self-sufficient on its own.
Yeah.
So
Now, there's also great support for this across
yes.
several of the game lines. So, RuneQuest Glorantha, there is going to be a new new Pavis book that is coming out, but you can most of the material that's already out there for RQ2 and 3 is still usable. I would highly recommend looking at the PDF for Pavis and Big Rubble. There's a Pavis book for Hero Quest. So if you're like, well, I kind of like sort of the more familiar touchstones, both of those are great ways to start. And in fact, I would say RuneQuest Glorantha sort of supports the idea of a Praxian campaign because you can make Praxian characters. And with the core book, they also sort of explain what's out there. It may not be enough to immediately jump in, but the foundation is there. And I think with just a little bit of tweaking, you could, you know, uh, dive deep into Prax. Now, the other thing I would just point out, there is a tendency with GMs when you come to an established world that you want to do it right. So for me, right, I have on this side got the new Lost World or Age of Lost Omens books for Pathfinder. So I want to understand Golarion. So when I go to the city of Absalom, I can really kind of let people know what Golarion is like. Remember, in Glorantha, the default thing is whatever you do with it is canon. Your Glorantha may and will vary, and that is the point. You don't need 50 years of experience with Glorantha to dive in. If you're like, cool, nomadic tribes at war in a desert sound interesting to me, that's all you that's it. That's all you need to do to kind of delve into these regions. It's again, one of the things that I keep hearing about Glorantha is that it's a lot. It's like drinking from the fire hose. It's no more difficult than jumping into, say, Forgotten Realms or Golarion. You pick your spot to start, and you slowly build out. You don't need to go super deep to start. If you want to, Glorantha will be there for you. If you don't, it's not. It should not be a bar to entry, and I hope that that's something we keep stressing. Is that the goal of this show is to show you how easy it is to get into Gloranthan gaming. Now, what's your if you were to set a campaign, if you were trying to sell somebody on a Praxian campaign, Evan, what would your number one theme to hit? Why would you set a game in Prax?
It's the wild frontier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's and so you have the need for an organization, a community, but it might not be your clan. Your clan is back in some homeland, and maybe you're one of these animal riders, and your tribes are there, but if you're not, then you found some other organization that's going to help you survive. Maybe that's a mercenary company. Maybe you've taken service with a noble or other important chieftain of some sort, and so that experience of the frontier, either surviving it or carving something out, settling in the rich river valley that runs down from past Pavis into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, this is a deep cut, but for hundreds of years you couldn't sail on the ocean, and only recently in the game time the oceans have opened up again, and suddenly ports are very important. And so there's a rush to be because ocean trade and trading those things into the interior is a way to get rich. And so there's a rush to establish communities to support those things. Remember, the people who got rich during the gold rush were not the miners; they were the people who sold the stuff to the miners.
Mm-hmm.
So and if you're going to be transporting stuff into the rough and ready frontier, you know what you need? You need protection, and you know what that means? It means murder hobos. I mean mercenaries. Which also means adventure.
Yes.
So all of those things really add up to a tremendous story. And then there's so many things like it's like, oh well, we need to go to the big city to get something, or to negotiate something, or to rescue someone, or so that all those elements are there.
I think that for me, the draw of Pavis or Prax, of which Pavis is a part, it's really the most familiar touchstone. I can say, hey, we're going to play a game where you're starting off and you are all mercenaries in service of this one guy. And all of my players who are from F20 games would be like, well, yeah, cool. That's sort of the start of any good, F20 adventure. Hey, let's go explore this ruin in the Borderlands because something's coming out of it. Awesome. You have a very traditional hook to get people started into Glorantha. And as Evan said, you start with something familiar, and then you start adding the mythological layers. And again, we're going to cover that in the next episode. Now, for me, there's one other set. So those are really kind of the two core ones. And we're going to focus on Pavis, Prax, and Dragon Pass going forward. But if we either of these two that we mentioned, you want us to talk more of, we will. Going forward. But you could always use, there's a great Johnstown Compendium book on Glamour. So Glamour is the main capital of the Lunars. So if you want to do politics, political intrigue, assassinations, if you want something that is, I would say, akin to playing in Rome at the height of its glory, but a magical, bizarre, lunar worshipping version of Rome, slightly tainted by chaos, The Glamour book is a great place to start. But the last one I really want to talk about is Balazar. And Balazar has a huge place in my heart when it comes to Glorantha. It is a classic setting. It is, as Evan said in our notes, I'm going to steal his line, it is a genre defining sandbox. If you want one of the best sandbox adventures and supplements to play in, go download the PDF of Griffin Mountain from Chaosium. It is far enough away from either of these two settings that we talked about, Dragon Pass and Prax, that even people who are familiar, at least in passing with Glorantha, you could surprise. You could say, hey, we're going to play here. You don't need to know anything about it because we're going to start from the ground up. It is slightly more Neolithic than it is Bronze Age. It's a little bit more hunter-gatherer, almost Stone Age introduction. But as Evan points out, and I'm going to turn it over to you here, there are these points of light, these citadels that were founded long ago that kind of serve as a more Bronze Age influence in this Neolithic setting. Evan, what would you want to? How would you sell Griffin Mountain to listeners, to viewers, to players?
Well, so it is a sandbox setting that it lets you do one of two particular modes of play, I think, with lots of variations. One is to be the locals, who are, by and large, a different kind of tribal structure than either we find in Sartar, Dragon Pass, with very sophisticated bronze using clans, or the animal nomads. Right, these are hunter gatherers who depend on the hunt and depend on their dogs. If you love dogs, you want to be from Balazar.
It's true. And cat people are from Dragon Pass.
That's right. Dog people are from Balazar.
That's right.
And so their worldview is pretty simple in terms of simple not as in unsophisticated, but simple as in they need to know where their next meal is coming from. Mm-hmm. They need to understand they don't need to know about the great big outside world and what empires are doing or what happened in all of the gods' war. They need to know how it affects them, mm-hmm. their spirits and their guiding lights that help them survive. They need to know about stone and the way it's worked, and then they have trading relationships with these more sophisticated centers, the citadels, mm-hmm. Which were founded in a prior age by a wandering hero who built them, and there's a layer of sort of nobility that inhabits those areas where they've become more sedentary, where they've been able to raise livestock and sow crops and things like that, and have trade to have items of bronze and more sophistication. So then the other is the Outlander campaign. You got to go hide someplace. This is the back end of nowhere as far as most mm-hmm. of these other regions, but there's an air of mystery and things that are lost. But you maybe need to get out of town. Maybe you killed the wrong person, or you crossed the wrong noble, and staying around is no longer healthy for you. So you hie out for Balazar, and there are these citadels that you can hang around and listen for rumors and find out that maybe there's a vampire's castle out there somewhere. Maybe there's an ancient weapon that's lost somewhere in the wilderness, and so then it's time to go hex crawling and try to find that stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're going to find what was rumored, or maybe you're just going to find some other kind of trouble. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah. So for me, what I love about Balazar is you can start a game in Balazar with the goal of heading to any of these other places that we've talked about, and the beauty of that is your characters in the game will know as much as your players do. So it's an easy way to start off and say, hey, here's just the world as you know it. Okay, let's start expanding it out as now we are sent on a mission into Dragon Pass or down into Prax or some lunars show up. You can gatekeep in a good way the influx of information so that your players get used to this. Okay, now let's widen the circle just a little bit. Let's widen it a little bit more. And there's just great things in Balazar, like Gon Orta's castle, which is this trading center by a giant, but it's a Gloranthan giant, so he's slowly turning into the citadel, the mountain, right? There's just so much good and rich stuff. Now, I did promise one of my friends that we would talk briefly on the Unicorn King for Glorantha. Do you want to just as our
Browser Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna try at the end of every episode to talk about one weird and interesting thing about Glorantha. So, would you mind giving us a brief introduction to who the Unicorn King is in Glorantha? Sure. I'm putting Evan on the spot.
Sure. So you would think unicorn. Oh, hey, that's beautiful. They're wonderful. Good. No, you have to remember that Glorantha is also the world where there are these things called the brew, which can breed with anything, and they take on the shapes. So they're usually a goat-like creature, but they're, they can have all sorts of attributes. So Ralzakark lives in Duraster. And
technically, the Unicorn Emperor. I apologize, not the Unicorn King.
King Emperor.
Yeah.
Anyway, he is the king of all brew. He lives in Duraster, and he is rumored to have lived for a very, very long time. And there are two sources, one that you can easily access, which is Cults of Terror, which has the whole backstory that sort of accompanies this the description of these chaos cults. There's a story about the struggle of the local tribes against Ralzakark, the Brew King. And the Lunars control that area, but they as an allied province, and they are worried about Ralzakark getting uppity, and they encourage and support the local Orlanthi tribe to fight, because otherwise it's going to be a problem for them. The other source is unfortunately harder to get to because it's a RuneQuest 3rd edition book, which those have not been completely reproduced. But it is Duraster, and Sandy Peterson, who wrote Call of Cthulhu, was intimately involved in developing Duraster as the most horrific, terrifying, sanity-blasting place. And there you really get a lot of detail about Ralzakark, who in his primary form appears as a unicorn-headed person, and who seems to have multiple personalities. You can meet him, and he's completely cultured. He is dressed magnificently, but he's surrounded by all these horrible, terrifying monsters. And then he can just be a terrifying, horrifying creature in and of itself, of enormous power. He is a final boss of final bosses.
Yes.
So
that sort of brings us to the end of episode 2, which is where do we start with the Glorantha campaign. So hopefully we've provided some good information. Next episode, we're going to talk about designing and running a first adventure. We're going to cover the adventures that currently exist as starting adventures and kind of our thoughts on that. And then for GMs who are more do-it-yourself, kind of what are our three main guidelines for writing an adventure for Glorantha. And I have an announcement that will affect our next episode. We are going to do a giveaway in our next episode. Evan and I are going to come up with a way to do entry, but basically we're going to give away whoever wins. They're going to get to pick RuneQuest Glorantha, HeroQuest Glorantha, or 13th Age Glorantha, and they will get a PDF copy of the Gloranthan rules set of their choice. So Evan and I are going to discuss, and it's most likely going to be some way of interacting with us either in the chat or in the YouTube comment section, and then we're going to randomize it and pick someone to win. So tune in October for our episode on Exploring Glorantha to find out how you can enter this contest, and we'll make the announcement in November. Again, you'll get to pick your rule set, and if you already have the rule sets and would rather have something like the Gloranthan sourcebook, we will talk about that as well. But we want more people playing in Glorantha, so we're going to find ways to do contests to get people invested in the setting and hopefully be able to pass on some of the cool stuff that we have from our gaming Glorantha. So, Evan, any thoughts on the episode? Any final thoughts that you want to share?
First of all, tell your friends.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Glorantha for me was just a revelation, and in thinking of where to start, I started in Prax in a setting with it when I ran it called Borderlands, which you can still get. It's available in PDF, and the nice thing about all three rule sets is it's really not that hard to convert these older things into completely manageable and workable adventures. Yeah. Borderlands is you sign a mercenary contract and your new family are the special team of mercenaries helping this official building a frontier colony in Prax and dealing with all of the difficulties and challenges there. And then I took my party to Balazar because they did need to get out of town and they needed a bigger scope of challenge, and we just sandboxed around up in Balazar, and it was amazing. And I made it my own. I took the things that were there, but they had problems with a vampire named Jazrak, and so my thought is you can do it. You can pick a place and you may have your own ideas. And the last thing I'll say, because I talk a lot, is a lot of things are out there for free. You can find maps that Chaosium and others posted. There is a wiki that has the light version of pretty much all the entries in the Guide to Glorantha. Now, I don't want you not to buy the Guide to Glorantha because it's amazing, but you can get an overview for free.
Yeah,
go out there and do it.
Yeah, there's the Guide to Glorantha, as we talked about in last episode, is really sort of the PhD level introduction to Glorantha. But the Gloranthan sourcebook is another great way, and again, they do a magnificent job. I cannot stress this in all three books of saying our default assumption is you don't know anything about this world. Let us tell you why it's awesome. And as much as we love it, the guys designing it love it even more, and so you can read that coming off the pages of HeroQuest and RuneQuest and 13th Age Glorantha. For me, I started in my latest campaign in Dragon Pass, and it has been wonderful. If there's any interest, I keep a campaign diary of that game. So if there's any interest, I can post a link in the show notes to that. But again, please tell your friends if you're trying to get into Glorantha. Send them our way. We may do an episode just on, hey, you're a PC and your GM has come to you with this weird world. What do I start with? And then, again, if you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed this show or any of the other shows we do on Iconic, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It's how we continue to get to do shows like this, which are really very much labors of love and passion projects for Evan and I. But we've got the Iconic Podcast, which talks about 13th Age. Again, lots of Gloranthan information in there. We have 2 shows that we run on Mondays and Fridays. Monday night is a 13th Age game set in my home world of Tanar, but it sounds like that one's wrapping up, and I will not spoil what Becca has planned, but she's got a great game planned after the 13th Age game. And then on Fridays, our friend Josh, he runs his 5th edition It Gets Worse game. If you enjoy grimdark fantasy along the lines of R. Scott Baker or Joe Abercrombie and enjoy just watching it getting worse, I cannot recommend Josh's game highly enough. So, yeah, I don't really have anything else. Thank you as always to our wonderful producer JD, who has been making sure that this show actually goes off without a hitch. So thank you once again to all of our patrons, all of the people who comment. Please let us know. For those of you who listed questions in the comments of the last video, know we are getting to them. We want to kind of do our establish the adventure, but when we get to our PC episode, Spirit Songstress, I think your question is one we're gonna hit pretty hard at the start when we talk about like making PCs in Glorantha. So I don't want you to think that we forgot about that. So until next time, enjoy Glorantha any way you can, whether it's in novel or comic book or role-playing form, and know that myths are still alive and well and that there is value in them. I would also add one last thing. If you have not checked out Prince of Sartar, the webcomic, it covers Dragon Pass and Prax. So you can find a chapter that will kind of give you a good framework on how to explore this set. So until next time, I'm JM. This is my good friend Evan.